Racing in, I believe this is the round 2 race. Reabs just had his first race fairly recently, actually, I think. And Crazy Ape raced Cab not that long ago, I guess maybe about a week ago. So he's been waiting a little bit for Reabs to catch up in his races, but here they go. You're going to see basically the same route, except a minor difference in that Reabs uses the shop and purchases a lot of W tanks. This is actually a pretty common route at high level and mid level, I think, and I think it's going to be a route that's going to take over for a lot of people because I think overall it's a more consistent route. You get a lot more impact, and yeah, it just makes stages easier. So, so we get both our runners going to impact first. This is mainly because of the weapon. Pile Driver is a really useful weapon. It's kind of like the Flame Burner in Mega Man X2. Allows you to horizontally dash even in midair, so it's a really handy weapon to have for pretty much everywhere else in the entire game. So that's why we're going to come here. We're going to get that first, and then we're going to progress. This is one of the few Mega Man games, and I always love these style of Mega Man games where you actually break the boss weakness route to go a separate route in the middle to make your run faster. I always think that those routes are the most interesting. So both these guys coming up into the mini boss here. Reabs just a little bit ahead of Crazy Ape, going for the Power Buster strat, whereas Ape is just going to go for the Lemon strat from behind. These strats are very, very comparable, assuming that your jumps from behind with the lemons are actually really, really good. I think the task that's a work in progress right now is going for that strat still, whereas Reabs is doing the newer one that's a little better RTA. Unfortunately, Reabs takes a death, but unfortunately for Crazy Ape, he follows Reabs' lead, and they both take a dip in the pit. So these guys are going to have to sort of set up again. Thankfully, Reabs has a ton of ammo. He must have got drops, as does Crazy Ape. So despite the death, these guys are fine ammo-wise. Ape taking a little more of a ride here, though, so he's going to cost himself a good 5 to 10 more seconds, though. So overall, not a huge lead, really, still for Reabs. This game has a pretty volatile, just like a death in this game is not uncommon, and deaths in this game actually cost quite a bit of time. In fact, a lot of things cost a lot of time in this game. Even taking a hit, an unintentional hit, costs you almost a full second. So taking hits and making mistakes in this game compared to the original classic Mega games is quite a bit more punishing. Reabs going for his kill here, just waiting for the fidget spinner style move here that Impact's going to go for, and easily finishes him off. This fight, basically, you're just trying to skip the gear phases. A lot of the kills in this game are routed around trying to skip power gear and speed gear phases. And the way this fight works, and unfortunately Crazy Ape's not going to skip it because he missed his blue, but you're trying to avoid these phases. And as you can see, Impact is completely invulnerable in this phase, so he has to just wait it out. It's a straight time loss of about 18 seconds here, so kind of a rough mistake to make. The idea of waiting for the fifth cycle there, where he goes into like his sort of try phase, is you have a lot longer time to get your 2 double buster shots in to kill him before he can do a new action to start that. So you see a lot of runners wait for that cycle just to make it easier. Reabs is now off to Tundra. So Tundra, a very, very strong weapon, and you're going to see how useful it is in the stages after. And now that we have Impact, we can do this stage a little bit quicker as well. There was a while there where a lot of us were thinking Tundra would be actually the first stage to go to, because the stage itself is a really solid, like, classic Mega stage. Like, it feels like a classic Mega Man stage when you play this stage. And it didn't feel like there was a lot of advantages to having other weapons necessarily, but it was figured out a little later that, yeah, Impact is just that good, so we're just going to go get it first anyway. The only downside of Tundra's weapon in the end, once you finally do have it, is that it slows you down to actually use it. So in a lot of cases, even in like sections where you're trying to go through screens, you actually don't really want to use it because of it slowing you down for about a half second every time. But in certain scenarios, it just becomes incredibly useful. So it's kind of a no-brainer to go get early, especially for mini bosses in like Torch and such. You saw Reabs there pick up some bolts. Again, like I said, he's going to be doing the shop path. So he's going to be purchasing W tanks, and he needs those bolts to do so. Also getting a good look at why impact is helpful. You're seeing a lot of these air dashes, essentially. Reabs does a nice job there. Gets caught up a little bit on the block, but nice job there grabbing the W tank. It's a little tricky. You want to make sure you're very careful and you don't miss that. If you miss it, you basically have to just leave it behind because of how you have to the intended way to go get that is actually wait for the wind to pick up and then go back all the way to the right, then back to the left to get it, and then back to the right. It's a really, really slow way to do it. So once you fail that once, it's kind of you just leave it behind and go. See, Crazy Ape also gets his, so that's good. Reabs is also fairly notorious for having a little bit less of a common weapon energy route. He's done a lot of these stage routing a little bit differently than most of us, where he plays a little more risky. He tries to kill a few more things in hopes of getting a few more drops. And so you might see a few different strats from Reabs that you won't see from a lot of the other runners in this tournament. Gets the nice kill there. Oh, okay, okay. So Ape can technically save himself there, but I don't think he has a good comfort. Doesn't feel comfortable probably using the impacts to try to get himself back on the platform. So takes a death, unfortunately. That's a pretty costly death. Probably at least about 50 seconds to a minute there in the early part of that screen, if not a little more, depending on how your movement and how well you do getting back to that room. So Reabs, meanwhile, he's into Torch now, so you're going to see, again, little bit different impacting going on. He's going to impact almost this entire first room, and then go for the crockpot jump there, which is really nice. So he did not get lucky on drops, unfortunately, so his ammo is quite a bit lower than he would like, even despite killing all those different things. Oh, Ape taking, unfortunately, another death in Tundra, and that's a game over. That's really, really rough. So he'll try to have to recompose himself and get through this stage again. Meanwhile, Reabs going through Torch, like I said. Again, he didn't really get a ton of good drops. Oh, he's gotten one. So he's got to feel at least a little bit better that the game finally gave him something. He's going to quickly hop up here, grab this W tank. Again, there are 4 W tanks throughout the A-Robot stages that we try to grab. And even that's not enough for Reabs. He's going to go to the shop and purchase minimum 3 more. Depending on the runners, sometimes they'll even grab a 4th extra one, depending on what they want to do with it in the later stages. But yeah, again, showing off how strong Tundra was on that mini-boss. It just, like, destroyed him. And Impact still being heavily used as high as possible. Basically, if you can swap to Impact for any reason to get that drop if an ammo falls, you definitely want to do that. So, not very many drops in the early half of his stage, unfortunately, but he does get a pretty lucky second half of the stage, so can't be completely upset with that. Ooh, got the aggressive kick pattern from Torch, but he handles it nicely. I don't know if Ape thought maybe that W tank would respawn or not. I don't know if he maybe thought it did. Unfortunately, items don't respawn in this game. So once you pick them up, they're actually gone. Unlike every other classic Mega, where typically you can basically farm E-tanks and stuff if you just keep going back to the same stages. I know that was a trick for me back when I was a kid playing Mega Man 4. I used to go to Skullman stage and farm the 2 E-tanks there. Ooh. That was a really scary last sort of pixely type ledge jump there from Crazy Ape, But it looks like he is through the last room, so... like I said, just gotta shake it off, Taylor Swift it, and move on. So Reabs is into Blast. Blast weapon, it's not super useful in a lot of cases of killing things in the middle of the stage, other than the fact that it's super strong and it kills a lot of like high HP enemies in one hit in a lot of cases with the Power Gear version. So other than a few locations like that, we might see like Blast in the middle of the stage, but its main purpose outside of like obviously Blockman, because Block's weak to Blast, it's actually very, very good against a lot of mini bosses in this game, and a lot of mini bosses just get destroyed by Blast. So you're gonna see it utilized on a lot of like things like that, as opposed to a lot throughout the stages. The downside with Blast, similar to Tundra, is when you throw it, if you're in the air, you kind of like hang for a short amount of time, and it basically slows you down when you use it. So you want to make sure that it's definitely useful to use before you decide to just sort of pull it out and go. So Reabs going into his Blast fight looks like he's going for the slightly faster Tundra opening. So there's a few, obviously, because this is a new game, there's a lot of strats that have changed, even since the Twitch Rivals thing that happened sort of near the tail end of last year when this game had come out. So there's a pretty wide range of strats that you might see from a lot of the people in this tournament. And that's just because a lot of people, some people, you know, kept up with all the new stuff. Some people wanted to sort of hang back and, you know, keep the strats that they were comfortable with. So you're definitely going to see a wide range of strats in this tournament, which is kind of interesting. Reabs did the most popular strat there now with the newest kill of the opening with Power Tundra and then the Power Buster shots afterward. The old strat, which I'm not sure we'll see then, maybe we'll see when Crazy Ape gets there, we'll see if he does it or not, but didn't use Tundra at all, and it was a little bit trickier, especially to learn. It's a very difficult fight to learn, but also very, very comparable, just a little bit slower than the new one. So Reabs is into Bounce. This is probably one of my favorite stages. It's super, super fun, super goofy. The feel is just really, really childish, obviously, at heart. And a lot of people find this stage to be a little bit frustrating, but I don't know. I love it. The stage is so good. All the enemies in them are super goofy. Meanwhile, Ape is into his torch fight here, so hopefully he respects the iframes. Similar to, I never mentioned this when Reabs was there, but similar to Gyro Man, you kind of want to just make sure that you don't waste ammo here, because typically, depending on how your drops were, your ammo is going to be likely only enough to do your 4 hits, and that's it. So you kind of have to just hope that you played a little bit safer in some ways and not go too early. But he did a good job there. Again, another huge stage here for W tanking, because not only do you get your impact back, okay, so this is something that really hasn't really been talked about, I don't think, much in some of the other tournaments, but W tanks in previous Mega Man games there wasn't very many Mega Man games, first of all, that had W tanks. And when they did, they only refilled one weapon. You had to choose which weapon to refill. In this game, they refill all your weapons, not just one. So it's incredibly, like, W tanks are that much better in that in a stage like Bounce where you're using a lot of rush and a lot of impact, it kind of benefits you in multiple ways because it refills both ammo instead of just the one. Reabs doing a really nice coil jet there to grab the last W tank that you're going to see him pick up outside of the shop. No, there's no W tanks in Mega Man 5. You're thinking of M tanks. So, Reabs going into his bounce fight. This is arguably the easiest boss fight of the game. I'm sure there's a couple other ones that some people might argue are easier, but I mean, I don't think you're going to have too many people disagree that this is probably the easiest fight. Very, very straightforward. You basically incapacitate Bounce immediately by impacting him because it's his weakness, and he kind of breaks apart, and from that point on, he's at your mercy to finish him off, so... So, Ape about to get to the end of his blast here. It's a nice quick coils, a few up there. Reabs is buying his W tanks, so he's got those. It's worth noting Reabs does actually take a slightly variant route where he does bounce before he goes to block. So you're going to see him do bounce, fuse, and then I think he still does acid last. So I think he does block 7th. It doesn't really make a huge difference, I don't think, time-wise, and like I don't think that there's a massive like following of necessarily one group of people saying one is faster than the other. It's mostly about preference and what weapons you're going to use. I know Reabs uses bounce in block, whereas none of the rest of us do, so there's no reason why we need to go and do bounce before that. But doing block earlier in your run can be kind of nice in that regard. So we saw some torch usage there. I didn't actually see if he did the other fight totally, though. But I assume that's the one he went for since I saw some torch on the screen. Yeah, on controller, you can switch weapons with the right stick of your controller. This game was set up to be played. You can play it with controller or keyboard. But because, obviously, on the keyboard, you can switch with the numpad, right? Like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 are your weapon swaps. Basically the same direction as the stage select screen. And like number 5 being going back to Buster. But the controller obviously doesn't get that option, so the right stick is sort of like that equivalent. It's not perfect, but it's better than not having it, that's for sure. That's another huge variant, actually, I guess, of this game compared to Mega Man 7, 8, and 10. Those are the other 3 classic Megas that had quick weapon swapping, and there was no way to just switch to a weapon immediately like that in the same way. You always had to use the previous and next weapon buttons a little bit, so this is quite a bit different and realistically quite a bit better when it comes to trying to go fast and utilize all your weapons. So Reabs is already out of fuse, so he's just got 2 stages left to go here in his 8 robots. Ape in block, so he's still got 3 more after this stage here, so he's got a little bit of ground to make up still, but it's going to be tough. Like I said, with Reabs' route and the W tank usage, it's a very consistent route in comparison to the route that most of the other runners like myself use. So Reabs is into block now. He's got a few different weapons now that we don't normally have. He does have fuse, but that really doesn't matter because he's not going to use it here in the stage, ideally anyway, because using fuse again is another weapon that slows you down. Out of all the weapons in this game, Tundra, fuse, and acid and blast all slow you down when you use them. And so typically those 4 weapons are not going to be used as much as possible, but just in some ways it's just you can't outweigh that they're good. Like some of those crunch dons, these guys with the big hammers that you're seeing in block, they just have so much HP that using a full power blast on them is just too good to pass up. Even though the blast attack slows you down, it's still way faster than trying to kill it with something else. So Crazy Ape going for a slightly slower and older fight here on block. He unfortunately didn't get it. He triggered the explosion on the wall too soon. He was hoping for another block throw from Blockman so that he would have more time to charge up his Buster to get the final hit in to skip this power gear phase. But unfortunately his shot exploded too soon, and he's going to have to fight the full fight of Blockman. Reabs, you'll see, do a slightly newer fight here when he gets there. It's going to open with Tundra, and just makes the fight a little bit quicker because you saw that basically Crazy Ape needed another block throw, actually, to make that fight work, whereas Reabs' fight won't need that, and so that's how the fight is a little bit faster. You skip part of that. Unfortunately, Reabs does take a death there, though, so it's going to have to reassess a little bit here and make sure his ammo usage is good here, so he has enough blast for his fight and all that stuff. You see there, he thought about trying to use his blast, but unfortunately just decides to save it just so he doesn't run out at the boss. He did get a really lucky drop on impact, though, so he's got a ton of impact, which unfortunately he's not using, but it can be very hard to improvise your ammo usage here because impact does move you at a set distance, and if you try to use it in places you're not familiar with, like he just did there, you might end up losing more time than it saves you. So like there, he smacked into the wall and actually cost himself time instead of saving, so improvising can be really punishing if you're not really ready for it, but he still gets to the end of the stage, and it's making good progress. I'd say the average time for most people finishing this game, Crawley, is probably near the 40-minute mark, like anywhere from 40 to 35 minutes, that sort of 5-minute range. Reabs and I at the moment are the only two that have sub 35 times. There you see that quick kill, really nicely done. So skips that whole golem phase completely. Unfortunately, Ape didn't quite get the swap to impact. Oh, he got a second drop, but he still didn't take it. So he's just going to go up the left side now. It's a little slower. Yeah, during races. I know he got a couple 34s last night against Moo when they were racing. So Reabs is into Acid now. This is his last 8 Robot Master. So this stage, ideally you're going to get quite a few drops in this stage, but you just kind of are at the mercy of the game. Thankfully, though, again, Reabs with his W tank strat, he has full reign of his impact here. He's going to be able to utilize it a lot more than a lot of us, just because he knows he has the W tank in place. So if he doesn't get as many drops, it's not as critical. He's still trying to fish for some, but not the end of the world if he doesn't get them. So gets his mini boss kill. Acid stage overall, I'd say, is probably one of the least dangerous stages in the game, but there are a couple tricky screens in this second half. The majority of the stage is pretty forgiving, but some of these screens coming up are going to have a couple... There's a couple rooms that are just a little scary depending on how risky you want to be based on the fact of how many spikes are in those rooms. So we'll have to see what Reabs decides to do for some of them. He does have a lot of impact, though, again, so being able to like use that in some of these rooms is going to be, again, really, really helpful. Nice jet jump there. Ooh, got a drop, but didn't feel comfortable swapping for it. Crazy Ape is out of bounds, so he's got his 2 stages left. And Reabs is coming through to the end of his 8 Robot Masters here. Looking like it's going to be a mid to 4x range. Or probably a mid 24 it's looking like here. Probably 3x? 2x maybe. Still 2x. Good fight. A lot to do with like these stages like Fuse and all that stuff. Like there's not a whole lot that you have to worry about other than just losing time to mistakes. Like Fuse doesn't have any... I don't think it has like any spikes or pits at all. So the only way you're going to die in that stage is to damage taken, kind of like Hard Man stage in Mega Man 3. And so you really just have to if you can keep your movement clean and your strats like executed well, you're not going to really struggle too much in the stage. But if you start to make a few more mistakes like that and he takes a couple more hits, it can start to look a little riskier near the end of the stage. So something to keep in mind. Again, Reabs is going to use the W tank in Wily 1, so he's going to basically skip that entire first 2 screens there. Really, really nice. Wily 1 is one of those stages where it's really not that hard of a stage, but losing time here can just feel awful. The stage is tough, but it's not like... I don't think it's super unforgiving. There's really only a couple rooms that you have to really pay attention in, and if you sort of like lose track of what you're like thinking about doing or what you're actually doing, it can be incredibly risky. So one of those rooms coming up right here. It's really important to make sure that your movement is good so you can pick up all the ammo in this screen here. That was pretty good. So it doesn't quite have enough impact to go all the way across the screen, but that's perfectly fine. Ape gets his fuse kill, really nice. So Reabs is into the Yellow Devil fight. The Yellow Devil pattern, actually fairly easy to follow since it's the exact same. If you know anything from other classic games, it's the exact same pattern actually from Mega Man 1. So it's really simple. You just sort of hang out, and there's only a couple that are actually a little tricky to dodge, so it's not that bad if you pay attention. And he's going for the slightly slower setup. Take the D-boost here and get your hit off the wall. It's not much slower than the other fight. It's just less than half a second, honestly. It's very minor. And that's what I mean. Like, there's a lot of things in this game that are just like so close together in time-wise that it really doesn't matter if you're going for some slightly slower strats in a lot of ways. As long as you execute them cleanly, your run should be fairly good. Alright, so Reabs is going into Wily 2. This stage, again, it's not really pit-heavy, but it does have a lot of spikes in it. And a lot of enemies to go through, and just one of those stages where, again, it's about more preventing yourself from taking a lot of damage. Ideally here, we're going to be fishing and getting a lot of drops for impact, though Reabs is not getting lucky here yet, and hasn't gotten much of any yet. Coming into the Sniper Joe room. This is the last room before the first checkpoint of the screen, so taking a death here, if anyone's watched most of my races in the tournament, it's a bad place to die. You don't want to die there. So, gets through that fairly nicely, just using Tundra, making it a little bit easier. These big pillars, you can't progress past them. Like, it looks like you can go over top of them, but you actually can't. So you do have to kill them. Blast, again, just being super strong, just basically one-shots them with the power version. He's got full ammo here now that he's got some good drops. Oh, unfortunately doesn't get over top of the guy, though. So he doesn't even need to go pick up those drops on the far left, which is really great. Gets another drop there, too, so impact is not a problem. He's got so much right now that he can even impact the entire boss corridor into the Mauvern fight, which is fantastic. It's basically exactly what you want. Oh, he cut one out still. Okay, Ape finishing up his 8 robots. And Reabs into his Mauvern. Gets a lot of nice damage there. Tries to go in for the Tundra hit. I couldn't tell if it actually hit or not, but his fight looked pretty clean overall, so I'm guessing if it did, or if he didn't, then it wouldn't have been necessary, so he must have got the hit in. So nice fight. So he's going into his refights now. So pretty much at this point, there's really... Once you're out of Wily 1, honestly, in this game, if you have a sizable lead leaving Wily 1, there's a very strong chance that you're not going to lose. Because this game, despite all the quick kills that are in refights, you're not going to see runners lose like over a minute here. That's just not going to happen. And I mean, unless worst case scenario, you die to Wily and don't have any real good backup for how to fight him. Like, I just don't see any huge time losses that are really possible outside of once you get out of Wily 2. So at this point, Reabs is very, very solidified, I would say, at this point in taking this one. Kind of unfortunate mostly for Crazy Ape, just in the fact that he did game over in Tundra. That was pretty brutal overall, and the start doesn't help his start when you're trying to go up against a strong contender like Reabs. So Reabs has one of the highest chances, I think, overall in the whole tournament to win it. So if you're going up against an opponent like that, you kind of have to bring your A game, and unfortunately Tundra just had something else to say for it. In some ways, that's a nice thing, and in some ways, that's a bad thing, obviously. Like, if you're from the perspective of Reabs right now, he can sit super comfortable right now, knowing that even if he makes a mistake, it's really fine. But obviously, from the perspective of Crazy Ape, it's not ideal. So it can be good, but it can also be bad. Just depends on how your run's going at the time. So Reabs just going through his refights. He's got 4 left: Fuse, Tundra, Torch, and Blast. Gets the kill, really nice. Crazy Ape is actually going for the faster kill, though he's unfortunately not going to get it faster. He got his first hits in sooner, so he could have got the kill further to the left, but takes it extra safe and actually ends up killing him slower than the way Reabs did it. So a good opening. Just needs to figure out what he wants to do with the other hits. So yeah, Reabs is on very good pace. Like I said, the W tank route that he's using is a very consistent route compared to the one that the rest of us are using. And so consistency-wise, majority of the time is going to win you races. And that's why I think Reabs has a very strong chance of winning the tournament overall. So definitely keep an eye out when the last few races and the last 4 start to go down. Because you're going to see his name definitely in the top 2, I think. Has to do a little bit of a backup fight there on Blast, not quite getting the kill he wanted, but still worked out. So, Reabs going into his final stage. This is looking like a high 34 to low 35, which is right up Reabs' alley with the rest of his race times, so that's really good. Again, just showing that consistency. He's gonna have to probably cruise pretty hard to get a 34 still, but low 35 is still gonna be a really solid time. Ape not electing to grab the ammo there. He also has very little bounce, so his Mauvern fight's going to be quite a bit different, I think, than we expect. It's not going to be the standard opening with the bounce balls. So Reabs going in. This is the one spot in the game where Acid becomes incredibly useful since it's Wily's main weakness. So Acid Barrier does actually get to shine in this game, thankfully. Reabs unfortunately having some issues getting the hits in, so he's used up half of it already. But the second half shouldn't be too much of a problem. Wily also takes 4 damage from Blast, a Power Blast, and so that's a very, very good weapon to use also if you can't get in a ton of acid hits. But he does get a couple in there, so he should be okay. Just going to take the D-boost and time. Looked like a 35-22 on stream, 35-25 on SRL. So, really nice. Good race time. So Ape is into this fight without the weapons that you want to have typically, so we'll see how his fight goes. Just going for the Buster strats, since... Oh, he did have bounce. He must have got drops when I looked away to watch Reabs' fight, because he had like 2 ammo the last time I looked at his bounce. So, finishes the fight off with it. So he's got his refights and Wily left, and that's it. But yeah, good time for Reabs, as he moves on now to face Sage Hero, the God Gamer, who PBs every time he races. No pressure. It is worth kind of noting here, CrazyApe using a lot of normal impacts in his run, I noticed, and not a lot of power ones. You do use less ammo when you use a normal like weapon attack instead of a power gear version. But you also don't go as far, so it's not as good. You basically move slower a little bit, like you don't go the same distance. Whereas a power gear version takes you further, so it essentially travels you faster. At least that's what someone informed me of. So unfortunately it doesn't skip the power gear phase again, but it's okay. He doesn't have to stress about it anymore. So electing to go for a 3 impact fight here, that's what I did for a long time too. It's pretty consistent. That's a big deal, I guess, in this game. Like, when it comes to the boss fights and stuff, like, the quick kills are really significant in how much faster they are. And so, like, for learning this speed game, like, learning the quick kills is actually a pretty big factor on, like, time save. You wouldn't think it would be that much time, but over the span of all the fights across the entire game, they're actually pretty significant. And some of them are actually a lot easier than you would think to pull off. There's a couple that are very tough, obviously, but some of them are actually fairly easy. And just putting in a little bit of time to learn them is definitely worth it. Ooh, missed his blue. So is he just gonna go? Okay, he's just electing to go right for the block hits. Ooh, and burns out. Burning out here is not that critical. The amount of time it takes to actually wait for that bar to go down is practically the same amount of time it takes to go between all the capsules and wait for the bosses to load in. Like your timer like ticks down during this whole sequence so that by the time the fight actually starts, you can see it's ready to go again. So it's really not a factor. The only time it actually makes a difference is in certain scenarios, you want to use like a powered impact in the boss like room in between in the capsule room itself. And so to do that, you need to make sure you don't burn out in those fights. But it's those fights typically are the ones that you don't really have a risk of burning out in, so it's not that big a deal. So unfortunately, he didn't get his blast hits on the wall again correctly. He's firing his blast shots actually too far to the right. He was like too far to the right wall before he basically needed to like wait further on the left in order to allow that blast to explode later, giving him that time he needed, but didn't get it. And just one more left here with Fuse, and then he's off to his final stage.
Hello.
Yo. Nice fight there. So that's his refights are all done. He's going off to the last stage. There's really not a whole lot you can do in this last stage for saving time other than you want to use as little impact as possible in the elevator room, basically, so that you can utilize it in rooms that are not this one. Since you're kind of like locked to a cycle on them, so as long as you're making the fastest cycle possible here, you don't want to burn more ammo than you need to, basically. And that'll allow you to get more time save outside of this room. Because you'll see here, Ape's going to get over to this spot here fairly quick, and still had to wait a little bit anyway because he got there too fast, essentially. So one of his impacts earlier in that section, he could have held back and then used it in that hallway afterward. It's just another little way to like try to optimize your movement through the stage. Ooh, goes a little too early with the acid there, so it actually didn't hit Wily. He was in iframes still, so has to take this a little bit slower. But gets his machine killed, so just capsule left. Probably a good call there, electing just to swap back to Blast. Getting hits in here can be kind of annoying because it's really hard to get hits in with the Acid Shield if he's not putting you in iframes. And now he's only got 4 HP left, so yeah, unfortunately he's going to take a death here because he's not noticing his health being so low. Being low on ammo here is kind of rough too. You basically have two options. It's restart the stage, which you can definitely do. You can just quit out of the stage and come back in, and you have to replay the whole stage part, but at least your ammo's good. Or you come back in here and try to lowball it with a lot less ammo, and that's what he's electing to do. I think a pretty unfortunate thing that a lot of people forget about this is the Acid Shield does a lot of damage to Wily, but so does the shots from Acid. So just because you can't get hits in with Acid itself as the shield, you can also make a single Acid last quite a long time, and you can shoot him with it as well. Looks like, though, Crazy is taking a forfeit. He's had enough of this run. He doesn't want to finish, so it's the way it goes sometimes. I can relate. He got further than I did that one time. So, congrats to Reabs, though, again, on winning. And he'll be moving on to play Sage in the semis. Is that the semis? I don't know what that is.
Not semis yet, I don't think.
Quarters, is that where we are? The round 3. So, good luck to both of you. Watch out. Sage brings his PB game.
I did PB last night in a race, so I'll just have to do the same thing.
I saw that. just do it again. Easy. Cool. I have nothing to add, so unless the speed gaming people do. I'm just here to talk about the game. I don't have any questions, so
that's fine. Thanks for commentating. I know like we were struggling to find a commentator there, so appreciate that you came out.
Yeah, no worries. Oh, I know I can interview. I'm not going to interview. I don't do that stuff. Anyway, so yeah, good job. You did it.
Sorry, I hope everyone enjoyed the race. And I'll see you guys next time. Next